Are you interested in adding bushels to your crop this summer? Dr. Greg Willoughby breaks down a unique, proven biological product called Fullscale. Plus, Brad Shaver, Director of Sales and Marketing for the Helena Products Group in Memphis, Tennessee, joins us with Dr. Kevin Meeks, Product Specialist from Texas, to discuss the importance of using Extractor to help producers determine what their crop is short in terms of nutrition, and they will discuss how Fullscale can be a solution to partner with some of those products. Finally, rain across parts of the United States is certainly slowing planting progress down in many regions. And in some areas, crops have switched from cotton to soybeans. Jody Lawrence joins us from Nashville for a commodity update as he discusses how the weather is playing a major factor in this year's grain markets. Stay tuned for this episode of FieldLink. Welcome back to FieldLink. On this episode, we're going to dive into, maybe some ways to increase your yield. And we're going to feature a product called Fullscale. And joining us today is Dr. Greg Willoughby. Dr. Willoughby is a technical services manager with the Helena Products Group based in Indiana. Greg, welcome to FieldLink.
Thanks, Bill. Good to be here.
Greg, before we deep dive into talking about Fullscale, tell us a little bit about you, where's home, and how did you get here?
So I've been with Helena for over 2 decades. Been in this role for the vast majority of that time. But I actually grew up down in South Central Kentucky, Tennessee state line, on a dairy diversified livestock crop operation. And cut my teeth as a hilltopper at Western Kentucky University, and did my graduate work and postdoc work at Purdue, and then ended up getting hired on faculty there and was there at Purdue for 10 years as director for their crop diagnostic training and research center. And then just never left Indiana and cover everything between the mountain ranges in the U.S. from a research and development side and doing some agronomic training along the way.
Yeah, definitely got a lot of experience in a wide range of crops too. As you mentioned, you're covering from really Ohio to Colorado, Canada to Kentucky. You've seen a lot of different things across your journey and beyond. I know, Greg, you've done a lot of seminars in South America. You travel around the U.S. to assist a lot of our colleagues throughout the whole U.S. Today, we're going to talk about some ways that growers can maximize yield. And one of those ways is incorporating a product called Fullscale into their farming operation. Greg, tell us a little bit about Fullscale and really what does Fullscale deliver to a grower?
So Fullscale falls in this new realm of the biologicals. It is a biological-based product. It is not a microbe. It's not an enzyme. It falls into the category of plant extracts. And Fullscale in general, it has a small nutrient analysis, just partially through the processing and trying to make things work better in the plant. So it's got a little bit of nitrogen, a little bit of potassium, and some trace micronutrients. But the big lifter is the plant extracts. And there's 3 main plant extracts that's in this product. And that's the engine of the product. And what that engine trying to do is it's trying to increase the efficiency of the plant to be able to move nutrients specifically into the reproductive organs. So the kernels of the corn, the beans in the pod, the kernels that are on the wheat head or in the floret, and then the weight in the bolls. And so it's made for reproduction. It's made to drive the nutrients into those reproducing pieces, if you will, to pack it denser, to make it heavier, to gain those bushels from a test weight standpoint, or to make smaller kernels big enough that they don't blow out the back end of the combine. And so we capture that when we go across the scales at the elevator.
So, Greg, Fullscale is really about adding weight to the seed, to the kernel or the soybean, whatever crop it may be. At the end of the day, it's about adding volume and weight.
Correct. Yeah. And so that's mainly based on phosphorus, nitrogen, and the micronutrients that kind of go with that. And we've seen in some of our analysis of kernel composition, up to 20x times movement of those elements going from what an untreated going into a treated. So we're definitely moving more phosphorus, more nitrogen, more zinc, more manganese into those kernels. And what that does is that lets that plant more efficiently process that into the starches. And the starches is what we recognize as test weight. So we're really increasing starch production, starch density into those reproductive organs.
So essentially, the more starch we have into that kernel, the more weight we're going to add to it. And last time I checked, growers are paid on the scale, and we're increasing, the weight on the scale with full scale.
That's correct. Yep. It's all about what's going across the scale. And you either do it one of two ways: is you get more beans, more ears of corn, more kernels of corn, or you make them heavier. And full scale kind of serves both of those purposes. We don't make more kernels or beans, but we can make those smaller ones that we often lose because they're too small to be caught on the screens in the combine. We get them big enough and heavy enough that they actually then register into the bin. So we gain weight that way, or we've actually increased the density of the kernels that were already there, and so we gain the weight that way. So we're actually gaining that weight for fraction two different ways: one, keeping it in the system, keeping it in the combine, and the other one is making it heavier once it's there.
Greg, how do growers utilize full scale in their operation? What are some best timing methods and ways to utilize this product?
So we've really tried to position this in that reproductive timing. So we're talking mixing with the fungicide at tasseling corn, putting it with the fungicide at R3 and soybeans, or maybe a late, R2, and maybe we've got an insecticide run, or we're trying to do a combination fungicide earlier than an R3 treatment. In wheat, it's really tagging into that flag timing when we're doing that fungicide, trying to protect that flag leaf from getting any damage with that fungicide. So it's in those early stage reproductive timings. We have done some work looking at it a little bit before that, and it looks promising that we might be available to eventually open that window a little bit into the vegetative stage. But right now, it's really focused in that reproductive timing.
Yeah, reproductive, is really its wheelhouse, and full scale. Our scientists, Greg, have been working with this type of technology, these types of plant extracts for well over 15 years. So this really isn't a product that just fell out of the sky overnight. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. Our biological research has been in process for, like you said, almost 2 decades. I like to say we were in the biology world before biology was cool, starting with just simple PGR type materials, and then developing into this whole new world of extractants from other plants and seeing how that affects plant growth, whether it's stress mitigation or helping nutrients move better. It's all across the board.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Helena was involved in this type of technology long before it was, as you said, the old country song, country before it was cool. In this case, biologicals before they were cool. And we're certainly catching a lot of attention now with products like Full Scale. What makes Full Scale different? How does ENC formulation technology make Full Scale different from, I guess, other biological products that are out on the market today?
Yeah, so ENC formulation tech was one of our early developments several decades ago. And ENC formulation technology does a few different things. One is where we get some micronutrients that help synergize biological systems. It has some growth promotions that today we would call biological additives. There's a variety of those in there. So I often think to talk about it is it's almost like a gas or fuel treatment, to where when you put it into the tank with the gasoline or the oil in a car's engine, it decreases the friction so the machinery runs more efficiently. And that's really what ENC formulation does, is it makes that plant run at a more efficient level. It has some other benefits from things that are mixed with it. It helps with compatibilities from a tank mix standpoint. But its real powerhouse is in that lubrication, if you will, or that efficiency of making an engine run better. And so it's a good complement to Fullscale, where that's what Fullscale is trying to do in and of itself. This synergizes that relationship and helps those three plant extracts actually work in a much even better efficiency status inside the plant.
Yeah, efficiency is the key, and that's what an ENC certainly sounds like. It certainly brings that formulation technology to the party at full scale. So you touched on something I think is pretty important for our listeners to understand. Full scale is with ENC formulation technology makes it pretty flexible to be utilized with different insecticides or fungicides. Tell us how you're positioning full scale with other products for that, I guess, that ride along opportunity.
Yeah, so we would typically be starting, talking about a fungicide, whether it's from a basic manufacturer or something along our Odyssey or a Varus lineup or Viathon and Mogul, putting it with those fungicides. But by far and large, we have a lot of acreage that gets an insecticide, and it gets it a little earlier and maybe even a little more perfect timing. So if we're running with Sultris or Tempest or another basic manufacturer's insecticide, it makes a perfect mixture into that, going into that reproductive timing. And that's really where we want to keep trying to make that focus, is if you're just getting ready to go into flowering or you're in flowering, beginning to set the seed, that's the opportune times. So as I said earlier, pinhead squared on cotton, tassel timing on corn, early arch stages on beans, second joint the flag on wheat. Those are your perfect timings, and a lot of times those coincide with an insecticide run if it's not just a fungicide run.
Greg, certainly Full Scale's been around for a few years. We still have a lot of growers that are testing it and experiencing this particular product. And many are saying they're all in, stacking hands and rolling with it. What kind of results have you and your sales reps in your geography experienced with Full Scale?
So we typically are seeing somewhere in that 3 to 4 bushel range in the case of soybeans, 6 to 7 in corn, cotton just under maybe 100 pounds of lint. And then in the case of wheat actually has one of our biggest ranges. So our low end on that range is, in that 5 bushel wheat category. But we've got a good set of data that's showing that we may be upwards of 10 bushels in the cereal grain market. So part of that obviously is wheat and how it's driven by moisture and temperature. So we get a little bigger variation that you have in the wheat market, all to the good side at least.
Sure.
But definitely has an advantage across those four crops quite significantly.
Yeah, I would imagine on the wheat side, it really depends if you're in a high production area. Like you have some areas in Michigan and Indiana where, boy, you can have some serious wheat in that area.
Right.
But as you get into western Kansas and the high plains of Nebraska, the Dakotas, Mother Nature and rain is kind of the critical factor there.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's not that Full Scale may not work. It's just, is the stage set to take advantage of Full Scale?
Yeah. And that's one of the things we need to keep in mind, is that, this is not a product that you put on ground where you have challenging soil tests or you're deficient in nutrients. Rented ground, what's the background fertility there? How well has it been treated in the past? If you're going to move nutrients into the grain, you've got to have the nutrients there to start with. So that's the only caveat we always throw out is, this isn't going on poor ground. This is going on ground that has good fertility. Okay. And generally speaking, farmers that are looking at these biological products, they're tending to look at farms that have better soil test levels. They're fertilizing in front of the crop so that nutrient load is typically there.
I think you bring up a great point. This is a product that can take really a good producing piece of soil that's well managed from good to great.
Correct.
This is not the saving grace product where you may have some challenging soils and you're going to put full scale or any other product out there and it's going to save the day. That's probably not setting that thing up to win too clearly.
Right. And so, and that's, and that's where this biological world comes into play is, if we're dealing with soils that are challenging and that plant's undergoing a lot of stress, we're going to move to some other product that has a stress mitigation factor and probably has a nutrient. So we may be looking at foliar applying phosphorus or potassium or a micronutrient to try to offset a pH issue or a soil test issue. That's going to be that scenario. And we may put that with another biological geared towards stress. So we may be taking megafol and putting it with high phos or Kaylee Fursa or something like that on those type of challenging grounds. Whereas when we have the grounding underneath and the footprint underneath from a nutrient standpoint, we're going to go into that full scale market, full speed to try to get those nutrients to move into that grain.
Greg, what kind of other tips are you sharing with your growers as you're giving seminars and talking to folks throughout the season about full scale?
So I think the central message I've started giving in all my talks is we have to think about where and when does the majority of the nutrients get turned into starches to fill the grain. And when we look across these crops, you'll find out that somewhere in the later reproduction stages is when 50% of the nutrients happen. And so when we start talking about nutrient management from a yield production standpoint, we need to think reproduction. We often think about, we put on fertilizer in front of their crop. We run starters on some crops. We do nutritional seed treatments, whether it's a seed box or seed coating or seed treatment. We do stuff vegetatively. All those are good. I don't take anything away from those of setting the stage because you're building the factory. But when push comes to shove and you're making the final product, what that factory is producing, which is that grain bushel, where does the raw ingredients need to come in and get utilized the best, the most efficiently, and the fastest? And that's always going to be in reproduction because we don't get to 50% of the nutrient load until we get to like R4, R5 in soybeans, R3 in corn. We're heading into wheat for some of the nutrients. So we don't get there until we're into reproduction. That's where reproduction management from a fertility standpoint, I think, has a big play that we often overlook.
I think that's a good point, Greg. We do all of this hard work on the front end, get our fertility right, pick the right seed, we get the right starter going, seed treatments, on and on and on. And then, the season hits, and of course, we want to take care of it with fungicide and insecticide. But there's always that one more little push, and that's what Full Scale can deliver at the very end of the season when it's the moment of truth. Quite honestly,
yeah, and I mean it's the capstone. That's the way to think of it. It's the capstone of the yield production window.
Greg, how many of your growers utilize Full Scale? I mean, it's a part of their plan. It's not a ninth inning decision, so to speak, but they're going into the season planning on using Full Scale.
So from a customer standpoint, we definitely have a percentage that is trying to push that envelope and they're trying the new things that are out. And they're seizing onto those opportunities. And that's the population we've been at for the past couple of years. Started last year, that started moving into the general population curve, if you will, of where farmers are starting to adapt to that because they've seen the results that other producers have had that like to push the envelope. And so we're building back into that, 50% customer base side where most farmers are. We're building into that scenario today.
Greg, I think it's also important, we touched on it earlier. Full Scale is easy to use. It will mix with a lot of stuff. There's really no handling or application issues, correct?
Correct. Yeah. We've not had really any major problems from a tank mix standpoint, airplane wise or ground rig wise. And part of that's that E&C formulation technology coming into play from that standpoint. So very user friendly from an application standpoint.
So as growers are getting ready to, many are finishing up planting and some are, are in the middle of planting, looking to the end in mind, take a look at those reproductive times of the year and consider Fullscale. Talk to your Helena representative, local ag retailer to learn more about Fullscale. Greg Willoughby, want to thank you for joining us. Dr. Greg Willoughby joining us today from Indiana. Greg, thanks for your help on teaching us a little bit more about Fullscale.
Pleasure, Bill.
And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the FieldLink podcast. We're excited to have you join us here today in our FieldLink podcast as we broadcast here and record live. Today joining us is Brad Schaefer. Brad is the Director of Sales and Marketing for the Helena Products Group in Memphis, Tennessee. Brad, welcome to FieldLink.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here.
And also joining us is Kevin Meeks. Kevin is a product specialist from Texas. Kevin, welcome to FieldLink.
Good afternoon, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're excited to have you both here joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about foliar nutrition and the importance of foliar nutrition for producers, whether it be a corn crop, a wheat crop, a soybean crop, or, any kind of crop for that matter. And Brad, talk to us a little bit about the importance of utilizing foliar technology, foliar types of processes. What's the importance agronomically for that type of technology?
Well, yeah, from an agronomic standpoint, you look at the efficiency of utilizing foliar nutrition and the technologies that we have available today. It's a much more efficient way to feed the plant, promote that growth, to increase our yields. It's when you think about it, at the end of the day, I always tell customers, plants have to drink their food anyway, and what a better way. The leaf is such an efficient way to drive those nutrients into the plant to achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve.
It's definitely a very efficient way to handle that. We can feed, and if you think about a lot of crops, not all, but a lot of crops, they're hungry. They're hungry at certain times of the year. We got to spoon feed them. And we utilize a product on our Agri-Intelligence platform called Extractor to help us better understand what's important around crop nutrition at that time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I like to use the analogy, once a year we'll go out and we'll pull soil samples and we'll take a look at that. And from a plant's perspective, that's kind of like going to get your annual physical. Okay, we go. The doctor's gonna take a look at your blood pressure, right, and pat you on the back and tell you to eat less fatty foods and eat more vegetables or whatever the case is. All right, but how do we track that throughout the year? In between those visits, we step on the scale every morning, right, and we check our progress. And to me, Extractor is that exactly. It allows us to go in and take a more snapshot look at what's going on inside that plant and to be able to adjust things on the fly.
Yeah, and it comes out in a wonderful report identifying to that producer what's going on in his or her crop at that time, tells them a little bit about maybe you have a deficiency in sulfur or copper or zinc or boron. And the neat thing about that is we take it to the next step and say, hey, there's a potential solution here from a way we can amend that and have a deeper conversation with your Helena rep.
That's right. And our locations, be it our AI techs in the field, the sales reps, our product managers, our agronomists, they all have access to this information. They can all chime in and help. The Extractor report does such a nice job in a nice, clean, easy to read format of breaking down what those needs are, giving you some suggestions to think about. It's a very customized prescription approach to looking at what that plant needs at that given point in time.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point on how, that Extractor report's kind of like going to the doctor and being told, hey, I got to do this, you do that. Kevin Meeks, I want to pull you in here. One of the things that we've often identified is, nutrition is really important, but having the right nutrition is always critical. But in addition to that nutrition side of things, we've got a product called Fullscale. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about Fullscale and really what it does and what it's all about?
Yeah, Bill. So Fullscale, we're targeting those reproductive passes. And in my area, I've got a lot of wheat that's getting top dressed right now, and it's about to start that shift from vegetative into that reproductive phase. And so what we're trying to do with that product is we're trying to help that plant move micronutrients, first of all, sugars, increased cell size, cell division, and it's all geared around reproductive growth. So we're trying to put as much into that grain as we can. And so Fullscale, it contains a couple different plant extracts along with some micronutrients to help us better utilize those micronutrients and increase kind of that reproductive productivity, if you will, in our plants.
It's a really unique technology, and as you mentioned, some seaweed extracts that are very specific to reproduction. And while we're talking about nutrition, the neat thing is we can kind of combine the two, because Fullscale works really well with a lot of other products that can help address some of those nutritional needs at the same time.
Yeah, no, it definitely can. I mean, like I said, we're providing micronutrients. Those micronutrients are not mobile in the plant, so they cannot be remobilized from the lower leaves of that plant and move them to the grain. So we have to put them in the part of the plant via a foliar spray to help them better utilize those micronutrients, because a lot of them are not mobile, and so where they hit, they kind of stay.
Right.
And so that's the great thing about Fullscale is you're putting some micronutrients where they need to be when they need to be there.
Kevin, what crops can we utilize Fullscale on?
We can utilize it on wheat, winter wheat. We're looking at a lot of that in Oklahoma and Texas, and there's a really big opportunity for us to use those on soybeans.
Sure.
Yeah.
Definitely soybeans throughout, pretty much wherever beans are grown.
Where the bean, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity there. And one of the unique things with Fullscale, it carries something proprietary from Helena. That's the ENC formulation technology.
Correct.
Kevin, could you tell us a little bit more about the ENC formulation technology?
ENC formulation technology just allows us to enhance that nutrient uptake of the nutrients we're applying. It also maximizes the spray application, mixability, compatibility. It's got a little bit of called a vitamin pack. It helps deal with some of those in-season stresses that might be occurring then, the micronutrients part of that package. But ENC formulation technology is critical in Fullscale, and it helps us just mix with a whole variety of products and be more efficacious in that application.
Brad, there's a lot of, products that are on the market that might fall into this category, but from your experience, how does Fullscale with ENC formulation technology kind of differentiate itself from others that are out there?
Well, there's no doubt about it. The unique plant components that those plant extracts that make up Fullscale, combined with the ENC formulation technology, there's nothing else like that out there like it. It's truly a unique formulation. It's a great product. We've had a tremendous amount of success with it, and just that combination, that was developed and formulated to put, it's really the best of both worlds. You're getting the benefit of the plant extracts. You're getting the benefit of that, those micronutrients that are in Fullscale. When you add on top of that the ENC formulation technology, it's just a wonderful, wonderful combination.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's proprietary to Helena. Our scientists have developed it in our laboratories over the years. ENC's been in our portfolio for a long time. This is just taking a little bit of extra nutrition that is proprietary to us, and then enhancing, right, Kevin, with that Fullscale technology, some of those extracts that are really just helping that plant be better at the reproductive stage.
Yes. It's not so much relieving stress like a megafol.
Right.
It's more of, hey, this plant is about to shift gears into from vegetative, trying to put on as much foliage to, hey, I'm trying to make grain now. And so those extracts will upregulate those genes that are responsible for help moving micronutrients into that grain, sugars. So it's not really a stress per se, but it's turning on those genes that are very important during the reproductive phase.
So reproductive stage with Fullscale. Let's talk about the timing.
Yes.
What is a good time? We referenced winter wheat.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter if you're growing winter wheat in Texas or in North Dakota.
Correct.
What's the perfect timing to utilize that?
Perfect timing would be anywhere from your flag leaf to heading. Anytime you're going out with a fungicide shot, because you want to protect that flag leaf, number one, and then number two, you want to help it make that transition from vegetative to reproductive. So that would be my perfect timing. Be Feke's 10.1 to, I think, Feke's 10.5. Don't hold me to that, but I'm not.
Ask your Helena rep. Local rep, right?
Heading or flag leaf to heading.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and you referenced something very important, I think, and the neat thing about Fullscale with the timing of that application on wheat. Same for soybeans too. What would the reproductive stage be for soybeans?
Anywhere from R2 to R3.
Okay.
That's the sweet spot.
The sweet spot's there, which is also a critical time for fungicides.
Correct. And extra nutrition if you need it based on your extractor.
You bet. So the cool thing about Fullscale is it plays well with all those, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It goes back to the NC formulation technology.
Just allowing more opportunities, more things that can go in that tank. Take advantage, right, Brad, of that extra trip across the field.
You're already going to be out there, so
Yeah.
let's go ahead and maximize that time and expense that you have being out there.
Fullscale just seems, Brad, like one of those products that takes the crop from good to great by helping out with that reproductive stage.
That's right. Yeah, it's been pretty amazing, the results that we've seen so far. The consistency in our yield response, it's been a fun product.
Definitely a great product. Kevin, I don't think there's any problem adding other products like maybe an insecticide in that tank.
Yeah, it mixes well. What I will say is that for growers that are really pushing yield, that have good fertility, and I'm talking like, if they're 80, 90 bushel bean guys, 100 bushel wheat guys that's got the fertility under it, Fullscale is what's going to take you to that next level. We've seen that in some double crop beans, in some single crop beans in Oklahoma, which Oklahoma rainfall's hit or miss, right?
Right.
And it's truly incredible. You'll see 5 bean pods where you treat it versus no 5 bean pods where it's untreated. And then you work down from 4 bean, 3 bean, you just see less bean abortion, basically.
Kevin, I think it's one thing that's really important for us to be very clear to our listeners that are out there and those folks in the audience today. Fullscale is not this magical product that you can just spray it out there and it's going to just make all things happen. You said something very important. We've got to get the nutrition right on the front end. How important is that in order for Fullscale to do all it can do?
So, it's no secret. High-yielding soybeans take a lot of nutrients. They're an oil-based crop. It requires a lot of nitrogen, which it gives on. It can nodulate and do its thing there. But you've got to have the right fertility program in place to make high yields. It's a matter of fact, and then you got to find those little niches where Fullscale might fit and help you get over the hump.
Right, so get it right on the front end, make sure your nutrition's in place, utilizing Agri-Intelligence, that whole platform to ensure that the crop's in the best spot, but then coming back with Fullscale at that later reproductive stage is a wonderful opportunity to get, Brad, as we talked about, going from good to great. Guys, definitely as growers are getting ready for Plant 24, Fullscale is something they all ought to have a good conversation with their Helena representative about so that they can take advantage of, the reproductive efficiencies with Fullscale, because it's turning out, it's all about bushels at the end of the day. We've got to have bushels to sell. So if Fullscale can help out with that, that's a huge win. Anything else from you, Brad?
I don't think so. No, I think you guys hit the nail on the head there, covering Fullscale, covering ENC technology. The importance of a sound agronomic program going into the season. It's there's no substitution for sound agronomic practices. So get on the front end of that. let's look at Agri-Intelligence. Let's look at our high ground and Extractor inspects. Let's take a holistic approach to it and get that good plan in place. And then we can come back in with products like Fullscale,
Right.
and really, like to Kevin's point, put us over the top.
Yeah. Going from good to great in Plant 24. Think about Fullscale. Make sure that you set the stage accurately on the front end, like you mentioned, Brad, from a nutritional standpoint, from an agronomic standpoint, and take your yield from good to great with Fullscale. Guys, I want to thank you, Kevin Meeks from Texas, and Brad, want to thank you for joining us here out of Memphis as we wrap up this episode of the FieldLink podcast at the Commodity Classic in Houston, Texas. And welcome back to FieldLink, and we're excited to bring in Jody Lawrence for some commodity updates. Jody, it's kind of the market's all about wheat right now. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the wheat market.
All right, Bill, it's good to be back. Happy Monday to everybody, and hope everybody is dodging enough raindrops to get some seed in the ground. But wheat had been in a weather market over the past really 6 or 7 trading sessions, and the weather market was all around the dry areas in Russia and in the Black Sea wheat belt. And wheat rallied 80 cents. The spark was the weather and the dry weather and the potential yield loss, but the funds were so heavily short that it was part of just part of a weather market. And then when it goes from dry to wet, prices go down. But wheat's really held up well. It has helped push corn back up kind of the top end of the trading range. So some good opportunities, but unfortunately, just because of last year's big crops everywhere and Brazil's big crop over the winter, there's still plenty that it's going to take a larger supply loss to really turn these prices back up to where we'd like to see them.
Well, and right now things look pretty darn good. My sources in West Texas and Oklahoma are saying, boy, the wheat crop looks really, really good right now. So that could certainly offset some of these hickeys that are happening out in Russia with the rain that they're seeing.
Yeah, and Russia gets the attention like the U.S. corn crop or Brazil's bean crop because they're the largest producer of wheat and largest exporter of it. So when they have a 1% loss or a 2% loss, it becomes a much bigger market mover than a regional problem in the U.S.
Yeah, and it's a little bit early to tell. We're getting some good rains throughout the Midwest right now. Picking up a few storms up in that Montana and North and South Dakota area. The wheat crop's still kind of question mark right now. Could be a pretty good year. I guess really only time will tell.
Yeah, I think everybody was worried. We had a little bit of a cold snap, a week, 10 days ago. So there was some frost concern, but I think that we're past that because looking at either the temperatures and the amount of rain that any of the late spring winter kill issue, I think is behind us.
While we're talking about the weather, Jody, boy, a lot of rain, some tough storms across my hometown back in Nebraska. We lost a lot of stuff in that area in eastern Nebraska. Prayers to those folks as well as throughout Iowa and Oklahoma had a rough run here recently. But let's talk about the rain that came along with those tough tornadoes. Boy, that's certainly starting to slow things down.
Yeah, I've not seen this afternoon's. I think it just popped up on my email. I'll look at it. This afternoon's planting progress, but they weren't expecting to see any major progress. Just kind of regional, wherever there were dry counties or people missed some rains. Corn is 27% planted through Sunday, with beans at 18, and that's it's not behind average enough
Sure.
to make anybody worry, but it also is not. It's well short of where we were last year because everybody thinks back to 23, conditions were perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It was dry. The soil temperature was already much warmer than it is now, and seed was going in the ground great at this time last year. And this year has been much more stop and start because of the kind of cooler soil temperatures and all this rain over the last 4 or 5 days.
Well, we certainly don't want to get mad at the rain right now. We still are, pretty early across most of the market. Certainly, things are a little bit tougher in the deep south in Louisiana. We're seeing some shifts in southern Mississippi, shifts from corn to soybeans and cotton. The cotton side of things have really slowed down now that we've kind of tapped that market out based on kind of what's happening here in the most recent past couple of weeks.
Yeah, you've got, just this time of year, you've got almost too much news that everything has to be heading in the same direction to get a big extended move. And you look how range bound everything had been up until wheat took off recently. But when you've got good, crop going good, but not perfect, safrinha crop in Brazil, the corn crop, their winter corn crop, and U.S. at a decent pace, but not great, and enough rain in parts of the cotton areas to knock December back, 5-6 cents from mid 80s, which everybody was right kind of above that level, thinking, hey, this is pretty good. I can make some money here. That 78, I think, is a good area for it to base and just see how everything does. But you've got so much news, some good, some bad, that we're just kind of grinding into the end of April here, and you got some other issues. You got a whole bunch of farmers who did basis contracts against May delivery. The first notice day for those contracts is tomorrow, so farmers either have to roll them to July or they have to make a decision to just take the price and figure out a way to augment it over the course of the summer, because it's prices aren't where everybody wants them to be, but just like the good news, bad news, always part of big ag production is it starts to cannibalize its own price, and that's still, we're sitting on that tail of last year's big crop.
Yeah, you're right about the news and how that can transition a market pretty quickly. Speaking of news, let's go to the southern hemisphere where we have our Argentina. We've got some strikes down there, and that's starting to impact some of the global markets as well.
Yeah, you saw bean meal up $9 a ton today because Argentina is the largest crusher and exporter of bean meal, and you can understand why all of those unions at the crush plants and the shipping facilities and everything, they have all the leverage right now when you're in the middle of harvest to be able to ask for more benefits or higher wages. And they've got a new president that he's putting in some pretty tight spending cuts, and also trying to raise some taxes. So it really just becomes almost just these guys want to get a little bit past subsistence living, because the unemployment rate, the United States employment rate the unemployment rate continues to go down, the unemployment rate down there often is over 30-40%. So they're happy to have a job, but they don't have a big enough bank account to strike for a month or two to get it all sorted out. So it happens every year, and I don't blame them for doing it, because their conditions are considerably worse for the blue collar workers involved in the ag industry than they are in the United States.
Yeah, definitely. If we think you have it bad here, look around the world once in a while, and things aren't all that bad. But Jody, want to thank you for joining us here on this episode of FieldLink, and wish everybody a safe planting spring as things continue out, and hopefully that rain holds off a little bit to finish this crop up.
Yep. Well, thank you, Bill. Yes, everybody stay safe and get that seed in the ground when you can.